Okay. All right. Perfect. I think this will do. Hello, everybody. It is just Matt this week. This week. We don't even post videos every week. It is just Matt this time. Phil is working on his project, and this is going to be our first Code Diaries video of one of us actually explaining our code. So remember, our bootcamp is split into 5 sections, 5 modules as we call them, and we are now at the end of our first module. So we've been working on Ruby this entire time, and we just did our final project for the Ruby section. So what I'm going to do is show you what my project was, what it was used to get made, and how I made it, and I'll show you the code. So first of all, this is a command line application in Ruby. We are using the only guidelines we actually had for this project was to use either an API or scrape the data from some website. So we are using, I'm personally using an API from GitHub. GitHub has a jobs API where they have job postings, and it's an open API. It doesn't require a key or anything, so it's fairly easy to pull data from. So essentially, my application, a command line application, it allows the user to search for different jobs based off keywords, and then either save them to their profile, look up recent searches, things like that. So let's take a look. So let me just make sure we're in the right directory first of all. Okay, we are. So go ahead and clear that up. So the first line of code I'm going to just personally do to run the application, I'm going to type Ruby. So our terminal recognizes that it's a Ruby file. And then I'm going to do bin, because it's in the bin folder, /ironjobs. Ironjobs is the file that I'm going to be running, and I named the application ironjobs based off of Flatiron. Okay, so I added a little bit of styling just because it is command line and it can get ugly. So ironjobs, welcome. This application will allow you to search through a well-kept database of up-to-date job offerings. Before we get started, introduce yourself. So it's asking, it's going to ask us to create a little profile, so we can actually use that profile later on in the application. So, what is your name? Matt. Okay, Matt, what is your dream job title? Software engineer. Great. What's the nearest major city? So, we're in Washington, D.C. right now, but we are eventually going to be going back to Boston, so let's just do Boston, because that's where I want to look. Finally, what's your favorite programming language? Okay, now I don't really know yet, because we've only learned Ruby and I know a little bit of JavaScript, so I'm just going to go with one I don't know actually. Let's do Python. Perfect. So now we have a few different selections we can choose from in our main navigation. So our first option, we can view or alter our profile. And you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, I have to change that. I actually haven't made it so you can alter the profile after it's already been created. That's a fairly easy implementation. I just haven't gone around to doing that because I wanted to finish off the other major functionality first, because altering the profile isn't really all that necessary at the moment. If I expand the application, it might become necessary. But so if you click view and alter profile, it'll just display your profile attributes. You can go back, you can click help menu, or you can click exit. So I clicked help menu. View your list of saved jobs. So you can actually save jobs that you're searching for to your profile. So let's view list of saved jobs. And we'll see that I actually haven't saved any jobs yet. So it'll throw a custom made error. You have not saved any jobs to your profile yet. And it'll bring back up the help menu. Search for a specific job. Let's do that. What programming language should the position use? Let's do something different from a profile. Let's do JavaScript. Where do you want to look? Let's not actually look in a city this time. Let's do a state. Let's do California. Do you want it to be full-time? Well, of course. And there it is. So GitHub has it's a kind of a sparing list of jobs that it has, but they are all up-to-date jobs. Generally, the employers are looking to get those positions filled within a reasonable time frame. So It's not like something like Indeed that has a bunch of jobs just floating around that no one will ever answer. So we have 6 jobs that return JavaScript with the keyword JavaScript from California. So lead software engineer, senior full stack web developer, UI, front end, a bunch of other stuff. So let's just go with lead software engineer. Okay. So here is that position. So with the API, I'm pulling the title, I'm pulling the company, so it's for Signet, the location, so it's in San Jose, California. It's going to be full-time as a schedule, and then the description is whatever the description is in the API. It'll all print out here. I haven't really gone into breaking down the description based off of keywords and styling it. I probably will do that. Like requirements is a pretty common one, or qualifications. Yeah, you can see right down here, qualifications. Bachelor's degree, minimum of 10 years of relevant work experience. So I don't have that, so we're not going to be applying to this. But you want to know what? Maybe I will at someday. So we will save this job. I'm going to press enter. That's another thing I actually should point out. It's kind of obvious, but the navigation is, you can interact with it through your arrow keys. It's not kind of a general command line application where you type in a response. You can use arrow keys, and I used a gem for that. Okay, so let's now search for a job based off of our profile. Yeah. It's Discord. Enter. So remember, our profile has that we are looking in Boston. We are looking for software engineer related roles, and we are looking for, okay, how do I mute this? Is that an option? So remember, based off of our user profile, we've selected that we want to work in Boston, we want to work with Python, and we want our title to be, our job to be related to the title software engineer. So we have 2 positions in Boston that returned based off of our profile attributes: senior quantitative developer and full stack developer. So let's go ahead and just select the second one. A little bit shorter description here. Full stack developer for Acadian Asset Management in Boston. It's going to be full-time. Here's the description. Let's go ahead and save that. And now that we have 2 jobs saved in our profile, let's go ahead and view your list of saved jobs. And you'll see both the lead software engineer and the full stack developer. If we click that, it'll expand it, and down here at the bottom, you can see it is back to our help menu. So I just set up a new profile so we can see how the history works. So we have, if we go view your list of saved jobs, we have 2 different jobs in here: lead software engineer, senior quantitative developer. So we have 2 jobs in there. However, I've expanded on 3 jobs. I wanted to see the description of 3 different jobs in my search on this new profile I just created. So if we click view your history of job searches, it's going to show all 3 of those jobs that I've expanded on, not just the ones that I have saved. So now let's go ahead and exit out of our program. Signing off. Thank you for using Iron Jobs. It's not that you stop hitting walls, you just get better at spotting the cracks. Dakota M, our instructor in our class, had to throw in a little bit of that in there. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. You can exit out of our terminal here. So this code, this entire project is set up as a Ruby gem, so it will be installable or downloadable, however you want to call it, by anybody who has Ruby installed on their machine. They will be able to use this gem. So it's a pretty standard gem setup as far as the file structure. So you'll see we have our bin folder, we have our library folder, lib folder. I think it stands for library. Almost positive. I'll look stupid if it doesn't. But we have our gem file, which is referencing our gem spec. Down here in our gem spec, we have a few dependencies. We're saying that we want to add these dependencies to make our app run. I actually didn't end up using require all, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I used colorize, which is how we saw the color in the command line. T2Y prompt is the gem I used for the arrow controlled navigation menu. The other ones are standard for the gem. So let's go into bin. So this iron jobs file in the bin folder is the first file that's going to run. And it is calling a module called iron jobs. So you've seen here it's requiring this iron jobs.rb.ruby file in the lib folder. So right in the lib folder there should be an iron jobs file. So there's both an iron jobs folder, and then you see at the bottom of that folder there's an iron jobs file. So that's the file it's going to be calling. And in that file there is an iron jobs module. So we're saying we want to call the module, and then there's a class that module that is within that module called controller. By saying .new, we're going to call a new instance of that class, and then we're going to call an instance method on that new instance we just created. So a little convoluted right there, but it's a pretty standard structure. So here, we're in this iron jobs Ruby file. We see the module that we were talking about. In this module, this is where we are requiring all of the gems and the files for our app to run. If we click iron jobs, let's go ahead and go over to controller. Actually, let's start with API. So this is our API class. And if we go back to iron jobs, we can see iron jobs/API. So now in this API class, this is where we are fetching. I named the method fetch, self.fetch. This is where we're fetching the data from the API. It is we're grabbing its JSON data, we're grabbing it and we're going to parse it to make it usable in our application. So the data is actually just coming from a link. It's this jobs.github/positions.json link. Because the link actually just uses keywords to find the jobs based off of those keywords. So it would be positions.json here, ? And then it would be, say, description equals whatever programming language. And then the next one would be location equals whatever location, and so on. So I'm actually just interpolating that language from up here, have them defined in variables. So this way, we can input our own keywords based off of the user's input when they're interacting with the application. So it actually, I set defaults here for what it will search for if no keywords are put in, just so we don't come back with nothing. So let's go to the controller class. So I've actually created comments for the entire controller class just so it's readable. I'm also going to post this GitHub link on the videos, just in the video's description, so you guys can take a look at the code. It's nothing glamorous. It's our first project, so don't expect the code to be, anything too crazy. And it's a little messy as well with all the puts. I don't know if there's a better way to handle all the puts, because that's how you print something out to the command line or the terminal. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, but this is how I'm doing it. So it's in chronological order, our controller. So this controller class is essentially allowing the user to interact with the rest of the application. So the methods within this are all directly related to what is being displayed on the command line or the terminal. So let's just start up here. Remember this call method? We saw this somewhere else. This was in the bin folder, the iron jobs. The call method, which is an instance method, as to a class method. The call method was called when the application is ran. So if we look at our call method here, it's actually just referencing another method called self.welcome. We have the call method because, once again, it's kind of a standard thing with gems. So it's referencing self.welcome. If we scroll down, it's going to be in chronological order. except for this initialize, which I should probably move above the call method, I suppose. This initialize is just initializing the class of, or an instance of controller. Within the initialize method, we're initializing it with an active user. And the active user is important because whatever user is currently using the application will be stored in this active user variable. So that way we know whose profile we're manipulating, and having an active user allows for us to add functionality to create more users. So say if someone wanted to create a different user and add different jobs to that user, and then so on and so on, we'd be able to figure out what user is actually using the application when there's more than one. And then the prompt variable it's referencing the tty prompt.new. This is the gem for the interactivity with the navigation and the menus. So let's go to the welcome method. We'll see it's saying iron jobs welcome. This is what we saw when we first launched the application. And then at the very bottom of the method, it's going to call self.initiate. Initiate will ask the user their name. This is where we're creating that initial profile. And we're saving all those responses into variables, and then we're going to pass those variables in as an argument for this method that's called new user, which is right below. And new user will create will create an instance of the user class. So that's what happens when the application is first launched, and it's going to save that instance as the active user. So every time a new user is created, that user will be stored as the active user, because the assumption is that that user is the one that's going to be handling the program from that point going forward. Scroll down a little bit more. You'll see right after the active user method it's calling help. And help is our main navigation. So we see that we're storing all of our options in a list, or an array called list. And then we're using those options with the tty prompt gem to display those options in that up and down arrow selection format. And then whatever selection is pressed, it's going to save it in an input, and then we're going to use a case statement on that input or on that selection. And so we're saying if that input was whichever element in this array, then do this. So if the input is list 0, which would be view or alter your profile, then call the user profile method. The next one, if list 1 or view your list of saved jobs is entered or selected, then call the user job list method. So we're going to scroll down more. We have our user profile, which is what we saw to display all of our user profile attributes. Scroll down more, we have the user job list, which is essentially saying if the list of the saved jobs is 0, aka there are no saved jobs in that array yet, because we're actually just storing them in an array, then we're going to display you have not saved any jobs to your profile yet. Or if it's more than 1, which is the only other option, then we're going to display the list of jobs. This is our search method. It's asking what attributes we want to use, and then it's going to call, actually I'm going to put a self there, it's going to call the list method, which is right below. It's going to pass in so it's jobs.fetch by job, which is actually just calling on the API. So it's going to pass in whatever data it's grabbing from the API for the list, and then you can choose from that list. That's where the title of each job is appearing. And then your selection will be used, and it's going to be called on, put a self there as well. Job expand, right below. So I was tinkering with this a lot because I tried filming this video before and I ran into a bug. So it took me a little bit to fix it. This isn't even the best way to fix it. but I'm going to keep working on it. But it's a temporary fix, it works. So then it calls on the job expand method, which is this whole thing. And essentially what it's doing is checking to see if the selection is what was pulled from the API. And assuming it is, then it's going to print out the attributes, title, company, location, schedule, and description from that selection based off of the API's data. And then it's going to give you the option to save the job. Here's our save method. Okay. History. This is our the history method, the history option that we saw earlier. Randomize is a method I created just because why not? It randomizes different responses, and so every time you launch the application, when it says something, it's right in the introduction, it's going to say one of these 6 phrases, just because why not? Gives a little excitement. And our exit method. So let's move on to our jobs class. So we're initializing each instance of a job with a title, a company, a location, schedule, description, and we're saying recent fetch so we can see the most recent list of jobs that that was queried. And then we have up here we have a class variable all that will store all of the job searches, and that is that's where that history of the job searches comes from. So each instance of a job that was created, we're storing it in the class variable all. And right here we're just checking to see if that instance is already included in the class variable, and if it's not, then don't include or don't shovel it in. So right below we have fetch by job. So this is just calling on the API fetch method, except what it's doing is it's passing in the keywords that the input that the user was had requested. It's storing that as the recent fetch, so we can keep track of that. And then it's displaying the information that we want, so we can put that easily in our controller. So we're not actually displaying the information in our API fetch method. This is purely just for getting the data. And then the fetch methods within the jobs, there's also one in the user class for the fetch by profile. Those methods are for actually formatting that information. Okay, create job. This is what is called on to create a new version or a new instance of the job. It is a class method, and then job profile displays the job information, or it actually just displays it returns the attributes in an array, which is then easy to manipulate in our controller class. Okay, so this is the user class. It initializes with some of the same basic attributes. We have the user profile, which returns with those attributes in an array. And we have a fetch by profile, which actually doesn't require any parameters or arguments to be passed in, so keywords for the API, because it's getting those keywords from the instance variables that are saved when a user instance is created. And then it's returning the same way it would in the jobs fetch method. And then there's the save method that we use to store the jobs or the selected job in an instance variable of list, so each user can have their own list. Okay, so that is about it. This video is already longer than I wanted it to be. I didn't really know how to cut it down or make it short. It's just kind of hard to talk about everything and cover the majority of the project without covering the majority of the project, which takes a while. So if you have any questions on my project, please feel free to message or reach out if you have any suggestions on how I could improve it. Definitely let me know. I would love to be able to expand on this project a little bit in the future. It was a fun, it's a very small application, but it was fun to make. But yeah, so this is 2 months into Flatiron School part-time online boot camp. And this is a very small scale of what I feel like I can already make. Hopefully to release some more coding videos in the future. We'll do one with Phil too and see where he's at. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.